Hey guys, I'm Christian Hayes and I'm hanging out with Rob on Front Row Live.
What's up, guys? Rob here, Front Row Live Entertainment. I'm hanging out with Christian Hayes here in LA, and I'm
How's it
excited to
going?
be talking to you, man. Congratulations, first of all, with the signing and the debut EP.
Thank you.
I'm excited to talk about this creative process of yours for this EP. But for you, how did you really discover your sound and your style in music, and like the lane that you kind of wanted to go with it?
It definitely took time. I mean, I started music when I was 8, so I've been doing it. I'm 26 now. I've been doing it for 18 years, so it definitely took a lot of time figuring out what I wanted to sound like and what who I wanted Christian Hayes to be. Right. Definitely came with a lot of trial and error, and I think honestly more than anything it came with I stopped listening to other people's music and just kind of started creating my own.
Yeah.
And also just like got confident with like the things that I was doing. Like I was like, all right, this is what it's supposed to sound like. Like it doesn't. I used to think you had to sound like someone to be someone,
Right.
and then I discovered that I just needed to be me. So
It's cool that you mentioned like you stepped away from listening to other music, because I feel like it does play a role in kind of inspiring you to become something, or sometimes like you just try too hard that you start to sound like that person or that artist. But it's cool that you kind of found your own lane. During this process, I did notice that when you recently posted about the signing, you posted that you didn't believe in yourself at times. So I'm curious, like, what was it that really kept that fire fueling during this entire time?
I mean, I would say like the biggest thing for me is that I just realized that music was something that no one could ever take away from me.
Yeah.
Whether it was, I grew up leading worship in church, whether it was just like always doing that, or if it was just always writing songs at 2 a.m. in my bedroom by myself that no one listened to, like it was something that I loved so much that it didn't matter like at what capacity I
Right.
did it. I just wanted to be doing it somehow. So I just think that the music kept it alive more so than anything.
Nice. So fast forward now, "Last I Love You" is the debut EP right now, and I'm curious, like, when listening to it, it's such a great EP, but it's so easy to just listen to it over and over, and that's what I found myself
I'd love
doing.
to hear that.
Yeah, like that's what I found myself doing. But most importantly, like it allowed me the opportunity to just like even on the first listen, I felt like I was starting to trying to sing along with you. And it's just such a digestible EP that you created. So I'm curious, that creative process for you, like how did that really kickstart for you? I know you had so much music already, that you had written, but what
Yeah.
was it about these tracks that you felt like, all right, this is that body of work?
So the whole thank you, by the way. I'm glad they're stuck in your head. But the whole purpose for the Last I Love You EP was with all my songs, I really just want people to know who I am.
Yeah.
I think someone wrote an article not too long ago about like my skeletons, like they're not in the closet,
Yeah.
they're out in the open. It's songwriting is kind of about like exposing yourself,
Mm.
but more so for me, it's letting people know that like, hey, you're not alone in this, right? But I really wanted that EP to be kind of a preface to who I am. It's like, hey, these were things that I went through. These were things that I struggled with. So you know who I am. Like,
Yeah.
like I'm just me. I'm normal.
Yeah.
There's nothing special about me. It's just that like I'm, just another guy. So a lot of those things that I wrote about were things that I like felt alone in for so long. Like Lily, for instance, is a song about discontentment. It's
Mm.
not something you want to like scream from the rooftops, like, "Hey,
Right.
I'm Christian, I'm discontent," right? But it's something that like seeing the like response to that song and the amount of people that are like, I feel this either in the receiving way or the giving way.
Yeah.
It's been cool seeing that. So I just really wanted people to know like who I was. So then going forward, I can just be honest with them.
Isn't it cool though that like sometimes these kinds of topics feel taboo to talk about, or make you a little nervous to talk about, because you don't know how it's going to be, how it's going to come back to you. But then when you do release it, like there's so many people that are feeling the same way, where they don't know how to speak
Yeah.
out, and then
Yeah, totally.
you're that door that kind of just opened for them. um I love that you kind of did that with this EP, but I love that you started it with such a heavier song like Black Gold. That just really let me know, like, all right, this guy is here to let us into his life. Like that's what I
Yeah.
got out of it.
No secrets.
So exactly. So writing something like that, something so personal, knowing that it's going to be out in front of an audience, like, was that an easy thing for you? Was that a challenge for you?
Yeah, so I always have been the type of guy that like I'll tell my life story to a stranger.
Yeah.
Now I get paid to do it, which is great. But it wasn't hard like being okay with sharing that. It was one of the first co-writes I ever did with one
Yeah.
of my buddies named Jonathan Hutcherson. And we just sat down, and honestly, we're just kind of like, it was the first time we wrote together. We were just giving each other kind of like a synopsis of like, here's the spark note of my life. And then I told him that like
Those are
after
always interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was, on both sides, we had great things to say, but also, it's life.
Yeah.
You've gone through things, right? And I was kind of telling him about like the situation of Black Gold, and he was like, "Dang, that's that's tough." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And then he started asking questions about fuel, because that's what I sold, diesel and gas. And he started asking questions about fuel, and it came up, and somehow like the term Black Gold, that's kind of like a slang term for fuel, came up. And he was like, "I like that a lot." And I was kind of playing this little progression, and I was like, "Why don't we write a song called Black Gold?" And just kind of like, it just happened. But it was, it was born out of such a natural conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just something that it's like, hey, this is my life. Like, again, like my skeletons are out of the closet. Like, I want people to know who I am, so they can better understand the songs. So.
Right. Was it easy to have someone? I mean, I know there's a relationship there with Jonathan, but like, was it easy to have someone there with you, especially because you haven't been co-writing with anyone else?
Right.
This is the first time. So, and talking about a topic like this, like, did it seem just like a natural process as well because you guys were already having that conversation, or did you have to kind of get used to that whole idea of having someone there with you trying to help you out?
I mean, it definitely, co-writing just in general, it's definitely taken time to get used to. Not like so much like inviting people in, but more so that I'm just used to, all right, like I never would sit down and be like, I'm gonna write today. It was like I would be, half the time would be like doing something completely different, and then like all of a sudden it would hit, and I'm like, oh, I got an idea, I'm gonna write. So the hardest part for me was, I guess, like sitting down at a certain time and being like, okay, I'm gonna write a song. But that's why I love like all of my favorite songs that I've written all started with a conversation, because I want the songs to always be real. I want them to always be authentic. I always want them to be raw, right? And
Yeah.
so a lot of times I'll sit down with someone, and whether I've known them for the last couple of months, or it's first time meeting them, we just talk.
Yeah.
And then like through the conversation, you're like, oh, wait a second, like why don't we write about
Why don't we
that?
just do it? Yeah.
So it's making things just continue to like flow and feel like the song's almost like an extension of the conversation.
Yeah. At the same time, with the vulnerability aspect of it, how do you feel the vocals turned out for you? Do you feel like that was something that, again, it was just a natural progression for you because you already used to this conversation, you're ready to put it out there, or did vocals kind of have an impact because of the type of topic that you wrote?
I mean, it was already something that I was gonna put out there, so it didn't necessarily have like such a huge impact on it.
Yeah. Where do you feel like you felt challenged on this EP?
Golly, probably picking the songs.
Yeah.
More so than anything. There's so many. I mean, not necessarily challenged, but I always just like making sure that the songs are gonna resonate with other people. Like, not just putting songs out because I like them, but songs that I love, but I also think like, all right, people are gonna get something out of this. I never want to like waste air. You know what I mean? Like I want it to matter. I want it to mean something.
Right. During this process, what did you learn about your songwriting, or what did you try differently with your songwriting on this EP?
I would say that like wow, I used to like a lot of my songwriting, like I would sit down, turn on my voice memos, start like strumming a melody.
Yeah.
And then I would like hum something, and then I would just kind of start freestyling, and Jay-Z does that. And then I would listen back through the memo and be like, oh, I must be feeling XYZ today, because that's what came out of my freestyle or whatever. And I like, so when you sit down and write with someone else, like I don't necessarily always do it that way. I still always come up with a progression. A lot of times we'll like hum a melody, and like you kind of freestyle, but you don't necessarily, I don't know, it's different. So I learned that like there's no right or wrong way to write. There's it's funny, we always put creativity in a box, and it should be like the last thing we put in a box, right? So I just like learning the different like methods that people write, and also the different way that, because of that, like then I can write also, but not letting that like affect like the flow of how I do things.
Yeah. When you write, do you write just pen and paper, or do you write with the guitar?
I write with a guitar. Sometimes if I'm driving down the road, I'll, voice memo, sometimes with piano, but most of the time I sit down with my guitar.
Is there a certain one that feels more comfortable to you, or it's just whatever that song is calling for?
It it normally always ends up with a guitar. So like if I just like hum a melody, the first thing I do when I get home is I sit down, I grab my guitar and
Yeah.
strum to the melody. And if I'm doing it on piano, a lot of times like I'll write on piano and then I'm like, okay, let me pick up my guitar now.
Yeah.
And piano just helps me kind of sometimes I can get stuck in the same like strum patterns or like notation sometimes.
Yeah.
So piano helps me get into something new. But it always ends with a guitar.
Going back to the sing along that you had me do on this EP, Cheyenne was the first one that I found myself doing that. And it's just so easy to just kind of want to sing along with you during this process. But I also feel like your voice is different on this song as well. I feel like you give me more of a vulnerable, raw kind of emotion during this process. Did you find yourself changing the way that you recorded your vocals on this song at all?
We recorded them all the same. I think that's just a heavy song,
Yeah.
and it doesn't like the production around it doesn't make it sound heavy. I think that's something we've perfected is making heavy songs still easy to listen to and
Yeah.
enjoyable, right? But I definitely think that that's a song that, like at its core, like there's a lot of like self realization in it,
Mm.
and like when I'm recording those things, when I'm writing them, when I'm performing, I'm like I feel all of it.
Yeah.
It's my life just getting kind of like tossed, tossed back in my face, right? And so I think there's just again like keeping it as raw as possible and authentic as possible. It's like
Yeah.
I want people to hear the emotion in my voice because it's not something I just fabricated. It's all real.
Right. And talk to me a little bit about your producer on this EP. Like, how do you feel that he allowed you to step out of that comfort zone, but at the same time feel like you were in this safe space during the process?
Yeah, so Lucas Bracewell is he's produced everything that
Mm-hmm.
I've done, absolutely phenomenal. And I mean he just lets me do me. He has a studio, like really nice studio that he's built out
Yeah.
in Nashville, and I have like my same corner that I like record everything in, and he always lights the candles, and
Nice.
we put the mood lights on, and like we get it feeling good, and but we just like sit there and like we're just humans with each other. Like we talk, sometimes like singing the songs brings up stories, and it was like, oh gosh, like yeah, like I can't believe I did this, and like that's kind of where this idea came from, and it just kind of creates this space of I don't know, just like it's this like creative space where like I'm not feeling like I have to like sing it a certain way
Yeah. You don't have to perform. You
yeah, I
can
don't
just
have
be
to perform.
yourself.
I'm
Yeah.
just like yeah, what you're getting is 100% me in that moment.
Has it always been like that between the two of you? Or like, how do you remember the first time you started to collaborate together and what that was like and how different it is from today?
I mean, honestly, it's always kind of been. So we collaborated for the first time ever the last weekend in November. So
Okay.
it's about been a
So it's
year since
going,
we
yeah.
started, but I mean, from the jump, like it was always, we just kind of sat down and talked, and then I would sing, and it's funny. There's times where like he'll be like, "I know you can give me more emotion than you're giving me right now," or we have this joke where if I like think about it too much, then it like comes across like not how we want the vocals to sound.
Yeah.
So like I always like kind of swing the mic cord and like not really paying attention. I'm just kind of singing, and he's like, "Oh, that's your best take." And so it's like a joke now. He's like, "Are you paying attention, or are you just doing it?"
Yeah.
And but no, it's always been enjoyable, and it's always been a pleasure to work with Lucas.
During these tracks, like which one do you feel like had so many different lives before you finally like said, all right, this is it. This is the one that I'm putting out.
I would say probably Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Originally, like that song is a little slower. Started finger picking, um, and we just kind of like added to it to kind of give it more of like a fuller body.
Mm-hmm.
Something that again, it is such a heavy song, and
Yeah.
something that you could listen to with the windows down and not cry every time you listen to it, right? But I would say that one's probably is the one that morphed the most out of all of them.
What about Memory? What was that process like for you?
Man, I wrote that song about my parents' front porch, and I
Yeah.
wrote it on my parents' front porch, and it
You
was
had to.
yeah, it was yeah, right, and that's where I wrote the majority of my songs growing up, and
Mm.
I was just out there one day and started like I've always had a super like photographic memory, and I was like
Mm.
sitting in like the far left corner that I always ride in, and was looking at like the old rusty, outdoor chairs that we had out there, and
Yeah.
the two chairs on the far right side that me and my dad sit in when we smoke cigars and drink whiskey and talk. And I just started having this kind of like flood of these memories hit, right? And like anything else, I'm like, all right, might as well put it into a song.
You have this theme of corners, so I'm glad that I set this up in a corner, not knowing that this was a thing. But what is it about these corners that I mean, it's in the studio, it's in the porch. Like, is it something that you just naturally happen for you, or is this something that you actively try and do when you're creating?
I'll be honest, I've never thought about it before, but I do love a good corner. I think it just I don't know, feels safe maybe.
Yeah.
Like it feels comfortable.
You know what's around.
Yeah, I know it's
Yeah.
around. My head doesn't have to be on a swivel. I think it's just but honestly it's just like corners are cozy. Like
Yeah.
I'm a big, let me like when I'm in the studio, it's all right, let me throw on the sweats, let me throw on the hoodie, let me
Right.
get comfortable, and I think there's something about like comfortability allows for vulnerability.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good one. Now that this EP's out, you have a couple shows that you're doing. How do these songs portray live? How do you feel that they've kind of, or have you actually tested these live yet?
Yeah, we
Okay.
have. Yeah. No, they do great. I mean, it's always phenomenal like standing on a stage and especially like I've done some opening slots this summer. And seeing, people sing your songs, it's
Yeah.
like, oh, this is real. You know what I mean? It's not a dream and such a humble thing. But no, the songs, I mean, they're amazing live.
Yeah.
I love performing and I love playing and super excited to like to bring, this is our first like headlining run. So an extended, 75, 90-minute set. So
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of new stuff that I'm excited to like toss in there as well.
Nice. Any of this new stuff did you record or write here in LA while you've been here?
Nothing so far on the set list in LA, but I know we definitely have a bunch of sessions coming up this trip, and then
Yeah.
in November I'll be back to do stuff. So we definitely, since I moved to Nashville, really started writing in Nashville,
Mhm.
and then we're kind of going over to write in LA, so I can kind of find like my crew of people to
Yeah.
do to finish the project out
I'm
with.
I'm curious to hear how that kind of impacts your creative process when you have this different people from a different location to start collaborating with.
Yeah, I've written with a couple of people in LA before, and I love it. I've found they kind of have more similar writing styles to me. A lot of times in
Mm.
Nashville, people write to a hook.
Yeah.
They write the chorus
I feel like
first.
that's
Yeah.
yeah.
And in LA, there was a lot more. Like I wrote with Eli Teplin, and we sat there
Nice.
and again had a conversation, and he sat on the piano and made me feel like such a novice piano player. And we just started both humming. And
Yeah.
then I was like, what about this idea? And he's like, I like that. What if we kind of do this with, and it just kind of morphed like top to bottom, like how I normally write. But I like writers are so like, they're chameleons, man. Like you can kind of walk in there and be a little selfish as an artist and say, hey, like, this is kind of how I do things.
Yeah.
Like, like, this is kind of the pattern I want to stick to. And a lot of times they're like, yeah, let's do it. And sometimes they'll be like, what do you think about this? And I'm always open minded to it, but they really are chameleons. It's kind of like, okay, what's going to get us the best song?
Right.
It's not about like, well, this is how I do it. This is how I do it. It's like, what's going to give us the best song at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I look forward to more music from you and definitely a live show. We need something here in LA. I don't see anything yet, but hopefully something soon.
Soon, hopefully, yeah.
But I guess to close us off, during the process of this EP, what was a favorite moment that you really had, whether it was in the writing session, the studio, or just being on that porch? And why would you say that was your favorite moment?
I think for me, minus writing them, I always loved that like first listen through.
Mhm.
After the songs have dropped, and it's normally the next day that I'm, driving down the road and can kind of listen to it
Yeah.
top to bottom and just hear like, oh, these are, this is me. You know what I mean? And just all the people that I get to work with through the process
Mm.
is, I always tell people like people ask like, oh, why'd you sign to a label? Because a lot of people staying independent, and I'm like, I don't want to do this alone. I think for me, it's like having such an amazing team to like carry out this process with is fun. And just I know that's more than one moment, but I think just every moment that I have with whether it's the songwriters producing on the label side, publishing side, like it's just having those people that I can like walk alongside with and not feel alone.
Right. And at the same time, you get to focus on the craft. And I feel like that's the hardest part when artists are independent, because it's like they have to be on top of everything. Now you can just focus on your craft, and that's what matters most to you. So awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for hanging out with me. You guys be sure to check out Christian Hayes' new debut EP is out now, and thanks for watching here on Front Row Live.
Thank y'all.